Thursday to listen for coworkers.
Pretty cool. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Bill.
I just want to start off by thanking everybody for their the support and prayers in this trip. This was a very successful trip. Special thank you too to Pastor Chris and to Gretchen. They spent a lot of time helping us get through this process and in the planning process of this trip. Being involved in mission trips for several years, it's and some of you who have been on mission trips know that it's really important that you're working with an organization that's really well run, and if it's not, it just makes it real difficult because you're sitting around, you want to do some work, and there's plenty of work to be done, but you just can't because it's not well organized. So this was the first time that I've ever worked with the St. Bernard Project, or SBP, like as they like to be referred to. And so I heard a lot of good things about them. So when I was working with them, a lot of communication with them, it seemed like this was going to be a good fit because SBP has a lot of corporate sponsorship, which I thought was a good thing because a lot of times, you know, there's a lot of well-intentioned organizations that really can't do anything without that sponsorship. But they have sponsorship through Toyota, Home Depot, Farmers Insurance, and UPS. There were some pretty big sponsors there. And then SBP then gets most of their day-to-day administrative help from AmeriCorps. So that there was, so I mean, after 11 years, most of the homes have been repaired, but many of the homes were abandoned. And at some point in time in New Orleans, they had to basically knock down properties. If you didn't, within a certain amount of time, get back to the city, they would take over, they would knock them down, which left New Orleans with a lot of vacant lots. And that's really where SBP kind of changed their focus. They call it opportunity housing, which was like new construction. This was new to me anyway. We've always done, you know, rehab, repair, and things like that. We never did new construction. This was our first chance at new construction. Our group began with a meeting on the Monday. We met at the SBP headquarters in New Orleans. By the way, this is their corporate headquarters for all their locations. They're actually in 4 other states now, but this was their first one. It started with Katrina. AmeriCorps volunteers are also, there was 15 paid and 20 volunteer AmeriCorps workers that worked with us. And the AmeriCorps workers, they volunteer like 10-month period of time. So they get to work 10 months, and if they want to, they can renew. And for every house, for us, we had either 2 or 3. There was one person that was in charge of the property, but they're also helping us out. So there's always somebody at the property helping us out, giving us instructions to start out and all that. They actually did a pretty good job of giving us some instructions and get us started, especially since a lot of us didn't have any experience at all in some of the things that we were doing. I probably want to start right now with a video of SBP and a little bit of history of where they've come over the years and where we are now. We'll start with that.
Was destroyed. Everybody grew up in that house. All my sisters and brothers, my 3 children, and my grandchildren. St. Bernard just started rebuilding it. It gives me a lot of hope.
6 months after Katrina, we wanted to pitch in and help out.
We started building houses, the 2 of us.
And people just started coming. It was so incredible. They volunteered, they donated, and that kicked off SBP. It was really an adventure, learning how to do construction.
I have family who
who've lost homes and have never come back from Katrina. We're here to get the city back to what it once was.
We had our first AmeriCorps team work with us soon after we opened up. We thought with more staff and more volunteers and more AmeriCorps members and money, we would be able to see more families come home, and the exact opposite was happening. The results were getting worse.
We knew we needed to work smarter, we just didn't know how. To do that, we had to change, and we were really fortunate to have met Toyota at that point.
Over the last 70 years, Toyota's been developing how to create the best production system possible.
If we do something well, we want to share it. We want to give it back to the community. The whole thinking behind the Toyota production system is continuous improvement. And how do we improve the process? We want to get everybody back home. In Toyota, if the shop floor line stops, there's a problem. You can see it very quickly. In this kind of setting, across the whole city of New Orleans, it's not so simple to see.
Before Toyota came in, we had a lot of information about our different clients' homes, but a lot of it was sort of tucked away and hidden in computers. When you have a whiteboard system that's set up, it's easy for anybody to use, it's easy for anybody to read and track all the different projects and whether they're ahead or behind.
We were the good guys, right? We were successful, we had built more houses than anyone else. We didn't talk about problems.
By eliminating problems, we're getting incrementally better. We fix little things all day long, and the collective of all those little things helps overall performance significantly.
People said there weren't enough ladders.
We named all of our ladders so that way we know, all right, we do have 2 extension ladders, we don't have to go buy another 2.
Some of them we give like human names like Morty, Tuesday,
Emily,
Sir Stepalon.
Laddersaurus Rex.
It was taking us 116 days to build houses before Toyota, and after it was 61 days. We reduced construction time almost by half. So, you know, that's a big difference.
Once you're liberated, you can actually talk about what's not working, and there's a tried and true process to fixing it, then you can really think big. So you look at Toyota's team. If you do it well, share it. We've worked in 4 different states, training other organizations. We can change disaster recovery in America.
To see the impact, you can't see that in metrics.
This is how it should be. This is people enjoying their life. And what we do is help people get back to just being normal and living their lives.
One of the things that we, at the end of our last day, we had the meeting with Zach, who was on the very first day, and he came back to the property on the last day. And one of the things that they talked about is what worked well, what didn't work well. What would you like to see improve? So they put that into play with us from the very start. So it was kind of nice to see this video because that actually we're playing this out. At this time, I want to turn it over to some of the other volunteers to share their experiences on what they experienced on the trip. Start with. Want to start with Ginger?
I'll go first. Okay, hold with.
Good morning.
Can I just start the slide?
Just close. Sure.
Oh, there it is. Yep. Remember that picture. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. You know, I really had no plans to go on this mission trip. Wasn't even on my radar. But one Sunday I was here in September and the announcements included an invitation to just stop in and listen and learn about this mission trip that people were going on. So I think God put a bug in my ear and said, you know, you just need to stop and listen. So I walked in, I recognized a couple of the faces of the people in the room. I knew even fewer of their names, but somehow it just felt right. It felt like this was a group that I wanted to get to know better, and all while doing something good. But before I could commit, I had to check my PTO. I tend to take a lot of vacation days, and want to make sure I still had a week left to do it. But I also had a prior commitment that made it necessary for me to leave a day early from the group. So the group fortunately was okay with that, and the rest is history. So I live over by the airport, so it didn't make any sense at all for me to come to St. Matt's to meet the group to go back to the airport. So I agreed to meet them at 6 a.m. at the Southwest ticket counter. Actually, they were really easy to find because they were all wearing yellow shirts. But, and the other thing is, I really need to work on convincing them that you don't need to get to the airport 2 hours early. But that's another fight. So we had a very uneventful flight down, all was good. And it took, actually once we landed in New Orleans, it took a little bit of time to overcome our group inertia. But once we figured that out, it was all good. Our first stop after we landed was the Whitney Plantation. If you look at the map, the Whitney Plantation actually is on the way to New Orleans from the airport, but it's out in the middle of nowhere. So as we were wandering around these roads, everybody's nodding. It seemed like we were trying to drive from Milwaukee to Chicago by way of Madison. But we finally got there just as the last tour was leaving, and it was well worth it. Whitney Plantation, if you're not aware of it, is it was a working plantation back in the day. And their tour focuses on plantation life from the viewpoint of the enslaved. It's a very powerful story that celebrates all of those who persevered through one of the worst blights in our country's history. I forget who, but there was a group that actually interviewed people who were enslaved at this plantation as children. Now, when they interviewed these people, they were in like their 80s and 90s, but they wanted to capture their story. And it's very powerful. So the story that everybody got was, well, everybody on the tour got one of these lanyards. So Julia actually was a child at that plantation, and they interviewed her when she was 89. So that really drives home what it was like for them. And it was an eye-opener for me. They also have a memorial wall there with 350 names of known people that were enslaved at the plantation, and there's probably a lot more that were long forgotten. So after the plantation tour, we made our way to the Camp Hope Hilton. If you ask any of my family, they'll readily tell you that I'm a bit of a travel snob, and and that would not have been my first choice for lodging. But I did see one cockroach in the bathroom that would rival the ones in El Salvador any day. But I don't want to mislead anybody. Camp Hope is a very welcoming, very organized, very clean and comfortable. And Walt and Maylou, who kind of oversee it and run it, they made us feel like family. It was great. I think Camp Hope was formerly a school, I don't know, elementary or whatever, but it's two-story. So the upper story has all the old classrooms are converted into dorms, and they're just wall-to-wall bunk beds. In fact, they're packed in there so tight that I had to turn sideways to walk in between them. But it's built to hold like 300 plus people. And so I can imagine what it would be like. We were the only group there at the time. So the 13 of us were rattling around the walls. We had room to spread out, and we did. But it's like our experience there was so different from what it would be like if there were 300 people sharing that space. In the, probably was the cafeteria area of the school, which on the first floor, they have a little plaque up on the wall. It's a line that demarks where the water level was in Katrina. And it's like, it was way too high to measure it, but it had to have been at least 15 feet up there. So when you look at that and you think, that's how high the water was. It really, it's wow, how do these people endure? But they did. The cafeteria also has ceiling tiles that groups that have been there before paint and do. We found one from St. Matt's Youth Group that was there a few years ago, and Heather did one for us. I didn't see the finished product. Do you have a picture?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. Because I had to leave early, so I didn't get to see it finished. But now everyone else that goes there will know that St. Matt's was adult church was there because We're going to be part of their history. As Alan said, we started our work week in orientation at St. Bernard Project headquarters. And it was very impressive how organized and how well they do things. And then we headed to our work site. It's like, I'm not really sure what I expected, but I was pleasantly surprised to see it was a darling little house in a very quiet neighborhood. Now, you can ask Nancy what she really thinks about the color.
Idiots.
He'll see pictures when we play the slides during the
We laughed about the color all week long. We did meet the 3 young ladies that were the site supervisors there, and I guess that was another surprise for me, although it shouldn't have been, that the construction was being supervised by 3 20-something women. It's like, yeah, go for it. So we introduced ourselves, got our name tags, did a little icebreaker, and then we were assigned, actually we weren't assigned, we got to choose flooring or tile. So I ended up with Al and Walt, a gentleman from Shorewood that's not a member of St. Matt's, and we were the flooring team extraordinaire. Now, I have had a little bit of construction experience, but I learned so much from these guys. It was definitely not their first rodeo. And do you know that you can actually move an entire floor by jumping on it simultaneously and scooting your feet forward, as you saw in that one picture? It's like, so we were working in the master bedroom floor, and it was about a ½ an inch off where it needed to be. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, jump, 1, 2, 3, jump. We moved that floor a ½ an inch. Like, I didn't know you could do that. That was pretty cool. High tech, really high tech. Actually, our team, our flooring team, did have a very respectful discussion with the 3 young ladies that were supervising it about how important it was to line up the flooring. They didn't take our suggestions, but oh well. We were there to work, not to disagree. There were a few things that had to be redone in the house, and it was very frustrating for all of us, but in reality, it was good because it was wonderful to see that their goal was to do it right and have a good quality home for everyone. It was definitely hot and humid there, no surprises there. So after about a ½ an hour, everyone's clothing was soaked with perspiration, stuck to you. We drank a lot of water and Gatorade. My water bottle held about 20 ounces, and I know I had at least 5 of them every day. That's a lot of fluid. The unfortunate thing to that is the bathroom at Camp Hope was a long way from the bunk beds. I got 17,000 steps on my Fitbit every day, but all of it was not going to the bathroom. But to summarize, that week was an amazing experience. I can't really say I have a favorite time of it all because it was all good. We worked hard, we laughed, we played, we held devotions, and we had a few adult beverages. Not at Camp Hope because they have a 0 tolerance policy, but we found a few good places. And now, as a result, I have 12 wonderful new friends, and that is priceless. And there's actually something very rewarding about seeing the fruits of your labor. We saw the finished floors that we did, and it was good. And although we may not get to see it, we know that somebody is going to enjoy living in that home for a long, long time, and that's priceless. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Sure.
Good morning, everyone. I wasn't quite sure what Ginger was going to talk about, so I won't go through any of the same stuff that she did. And I'm going to go more for my personal view about why I decided to go on a mission trip and what all of this meant to me before, during, and after. So I had never gone on the adult mission trips before, and I have gone on a couple of the youth and really enjoyed them a lot, but I had always wanted to go with the adult ones. I work for a school, and I used to work at an elementary school, and most of the adult trips were during the school year. I was not able to take time off. Well, I've had a job change, and now I'm at a school and I work year-round, so I actually get vacation time. So I was able to take advantage of that vacation and join everyone on the trip. So my thoughts beforehand for going on the mission trip were I had always enjoyed the youth trips. I wanted to go on one where I could be responsible for myself and not have to worry about what somebody else may be doing when I wasn't watching, you know. So, and with the mission trip and going away, I like the uninterrupted time to serve. I didn't have to worry about what was for dinner or where somebody had to be or what was happening at work. Our focus was, our purpose for being there was just to work, and to have that time to just focus on that and put all my energy into that. I really like that idea. I like home improvement. I'm not necessarily really good at all of it, but the heart's there, and I love to do things around the house. So this was definitely a good mission trip for me that way. Again, the people, the familiar faces, I knew some of the people. A lot of people I did not know. I thought great opportunity to get to know others at church. And going away, I like to travel. I like to see new places, so it fit the bill for me. As far as what we were actually doing, one thing that the SBP had us do, there was a form, and I did it online before we went down. And one thing, you know, they asked is what your goals were, you know, for yourself, what you thought this would be, what you would like to get out of it. And, you know, so I was thinking about that anyway, and I thought, you know, I want to have fun, I want to work hard, I want to accomplish something. I did not know we were going to be doing new construction, so I thought, you know, if we're going to be fixing up something old, I didn't want it to be horrible, you know, but there's some scary thoughts. But, you know, I really want to work hard. I want to accomplish something. I want to be able to say, you know, this is what we were able to do, and it was all great and it was all wonderful. You know, I thought there'll be some challenges. There might be some frustrations, but it'll be fine. We're all grown-ups. It's not a problem. Then there was reality, and it was wonderful. It was fun. We got a lot of work done. And there were challenges. SBP being a volunteer organization and going with the new construction, they had tile, they had flooring. Initially there was some finish work that needed to be done with the cabinetry. And so all of these things involve having to cut pieces to fit. And it's a new home, there's not electricity. They have a pole outside with a temporary electric there, an extension cord running, and they have saws on the front porch. So it's great, you go out in the fresh air and you can cut one saw at a time. So there's 2 people in one bathroom that need to cut tile, 2 people in the other bathroom that need to cut tile. There were 2 flooring groups that needed to cut flooring, and then there were Dick and I who needed to cut for the kitchen. And so you would get your measurement and you would go stand there with your board or your tile and you'd wait, and then somebody would get done and you'd run over to your tile and you try to be very polite, and what you're thinking is, get out of my way because I'm going to that saw next. But you would, you know, that's not what you would say, you know. And so that was a challenge, and it's, you know, it's frustrating and you think, oh my gosh, why is it like this? But this is what they're working with, you know, and they are accomplishing so much with a bunch of people standing in line and waiting. And so for me, I had to just keep refocusing and say, okay, I'm here to work and I want to work, and they're stopping me from working and from accomplishing how much I could get done. I could be doing so much more if we had maybe 2 extension cords, you know. But as the week went on, it just really helped to remember we were getting a lot done. We were learning some patience. I was learning to maybe measure 2 boards and cut 2 at the same time, so I didn't have to go back twice. You know, so there was a lot. There was a learning curve there, and it was good for everyone. One thing that helped, we did have a woman who has moved into one of the opportunity houses this spring, and she's just a couple blocks over, and she was able to come over and meet with us. And she was just such a joyful person, and just, it was really uplifting to hear her and just to see her standing there with a smile on her face. and saying how for her, the getting a home and owning a home and going through that process was frustrating and it was scary, and there were times where she's like, I can't do this. And SBP, they helped her through. They got her where she needed to be, got her in touch with the people she needed. She could get her financing, get everything set. And now her family's in this house, and they're putting down roots, and they're in New Orleans, and they're happy, and it just glows from her. And that really, having that midweek, it was like, okay, back to our focus. This is what we're going for. During the week, and as I was thinking about today, I'm looking at different Bible verses, because I'm like, okay, this is church. I should probably have some Bible verses for this. And one passage that came up to me was 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verses 16 through 18. And I won't read that, but what it talks about is, to rejoice always, to pray consistently, and to always give thanks. And I said, it was really a transitional process for me, because when we started, yes, we were rejoicing. We're like, yes, here we go. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, and we are ready. We're excited. So great. We prayed, keep us safe, help us accomplish a lot. We were thankful. Thank you, God, for this opportunity. Thank you to everyone here. That was great. By maybe Tuesday afternoon, after you're sweating and waiting and crabby, you're like, hallelujah, this day is over. We can go eat the food. Praying, you would be in the bathroom that was 400 miles away from the bedrooms in the middle of the night, and you're in the bathroom and you hear a little noise behind you, and you pick up your feet and go, please God, don't let it be a cockroach. And then you think about the other things that may live in New Orleans, and you're like, okay, cockroach is good. And then, your thank you was, thank you God, I did not hit anybody with a hammer today. By the time we were leaving and looking back at everything, and it was very reaffirming, because we met with the people from SBP and our site supervisor people, and where I was sometimes thinking, okay, I only, we got the cabinetry done, and then we were working on flooring, and there was this hallway and this living room, and we only got so much done, and I didn't want to get so much done. I wanted to get this much done, and we're running out of time, and it was so frustrating. But then talking to them, and they're saying, thank you, you've done so much, you've helped us so much, we are so much farther along, the family is so much closer to getting into their house. And I had to just remember, okay, this is what I was thinking, this is what I wanted, this is what they were seeing in the big picture, and I needed to see that big picture as well. And I needed to open myself to not what I wanted and what I thought, but what was better for everyone and what was actually happening. So the rejoice there was, just praising God. You know what? We did a lot. We accomplished a lot. And everyone was safe. Praying that the next groups will come in and be able to finish this and get these people in their houses. And just thankful for what we accomplished, both working in relationship building. Everyone was safe. I think I grew in some skills. I had never done flooring before. So now Steve's in trouble. We may have new flooring in our house. Who knows? But so I learned skills. But the relationship building, the people skills, learning to tolerate each other, to appreciate each other, to love each other, and to show that, it was really amazing. So I guess when I look back at it, I wanted to go on the trip. I wanted to learn. I wanted to contribute. I wanted it to be this great experience. It was not the experience that I would say, this is how it's going to work. But when I look back at it, I learned more than I thought I would. I believe I grew more than I thought I would. And I certainly learned to appreciate everybody a lot more than I had previously. So I would definitely do it again.
Nancy?
Yeah?
You're up.
Hello. So, I had been on all the previous adult mission trips except Joplin. Somehow that one snuck in there and that didn't work out for us. So, I thought about it and I thought, do I really want to go again? Because I know what it's like. You're sleeping in a sleeping bag and you're on a bunk bed, and you know, things are just not convenient, and it's not like going on vacation because you know you're going to work, and somehow I still wanted to go. But then I thought, let's face it, I'm not 40 years old anymore, and I'm just not going to be able to do that much. And so I thought, maybe I shouldn't bother. And then finally it occurred to me, well, I can go and I can do what I can do. If I can't work like a 40-year-old person, or I can't work like these young, lovely young women that were in AmeriCorps, but I can do something. And so whatever that, if this is how much needs to be done and I can only do this much, that's that much that's taken off this much. So at least I'm doing something. And so I went with that idea that I wasn't gonna like kill myself. I wasn't gonna just sit there and, you know, fool around, but I wasn't gonna overdo more than I thought I could do. And darned if I didn't do really well. I was really surprised, you know. There was a little bit of a competition between the two bathrooms.
Oh, that is outstanding.
Not really a competition, but we both had kind of essentially the same thing to do, which was build a surround around the tub, from the tub to the ceiling of tile. And I had never done any tile work before, but when we got to the house, the site supervisor kind of said, well, this is the things that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to do this flooring, and we're going to have to do some finishing work, and we're going to have to do this tiling. So does anybody want to tile? And my hand flew up faster than you can imagine. Not because I really wanted to tile, but because I knew I wasn't going to be up and down on that floor. And I'd seen people do the flooring when we were at previous trips, and I thought, that's one thing I know I'm not going to be able to do. So I'll take a chance at doing the tiling. And it was pretty fun, actually. Though the first day when we started out, I worked with Al Van Lith, so we like to tease and say that we spent a week in the tub together. But when we started out, someone had already started to place tiles on the wall and had not done a very good job of it. And so some of the tiles were already pulled off, and the mortar was left on the wall, and that's not fun. It's just not. We had to chip the mortar from the previous tiles off the wall so that we could have a flat surface to start again. So basically we spent the first day with chisel and hammer chiseling mortar off a section like this, you know, which doesn't seem like it should have taken that long, but it just does. And so then the next day we actually got into where we could start tiling, and it was very interesting. Learned how to use the tile saw and learned how to mix mortar so that it just drips off your finger just so, and it was good. It was good. It was hot, and there were times where I just would look down because I thought, is something crawling on me? But it was just the sweat running down my legs, you know. And I was like, oh, okay, it's just sweat. That's no big deal. We're used to sweat by now. And I drank a lot more water in that week than I've probably drunk in a year. But it was a good thing, you know, so I'm learning to drink water now. I just want to say that if you're ever considering doing this, even if you're not too sure about it, I'd say it's a great experience. It's, you push yourself to do things that you might never thought you could have done. You work with a bunch of wonderful, wonderful people. It was Al and the 12 disciples, you know. And you truly are making a difference in someone's life. When I first saw new construction, I thought, oh, well, you know, you don't get to meet the owner and you don't get to hear their story of how they endured this, whatever tragedy it was, you know, if it was a flood or the, you know, different places that we've gone. You don't have that, I'm not gonna have that connection with whoever house I'm working on. But after a while, it didn't matter. It really didn't matter that there wasn't, you know, Lisa said that woman from a few blocks over came over, and she just was that representative of who that person is that's gonna live in that house. And I mean, after 11 years, let's face it, there's only, I mean, they've pretty much done all the rehabbing that they can do. So there isn't going to be rehabbing. So it's building new. So it's starting over. It's giving someone a fresh start in a house, in a home, in a new life for them. So it didn't matter that I didn't have that connection with whoever's house I worked on, and that I won't send them a Christmas card, you know, and say, I hope you're still doing well. And it was just a wonderful trip, and I would go again, because I know that I can do something. And if everybody can do just a little something, nobody can change the whole world by themselves. It's working as a group. It's working with a purpose. It's working with God, what God put us here to do, with our hands, with our hearts. And so I'd encourage anybody to consider taking a trip. It's not the Hilton, and I don't know, it's just good. It's good. We had, I thought of other things I was going to say when the two other girls were talking, but now I can't remember what they are. But maybe if people have questions, I'll remember what that was. But thank you to Al, and thank you to everyone who helped put this trip together. Gretchen, too, for passing on all the information so that we weren't inventing the wheel. You know, everything was in place for us. It was a good situation to go into, and it was really nice that we were the only ones there, because we really could spread out and bond together without clawing our way into the bathroom, which, you know, I don't see how 300 people could ever possibly use the few bathrooms and the few, I just like, no way. But we did it, we did good, so thanks be to God.
Quickly, some of the slides. One of the things I want to mention is that we did have a really great crew. Second day of our work, everybody had their job assignments. Everybody was going back into it, and so I was sitting with Perry, who was the coordinator, and we started talking about where everyone's going. And before we even got a chance to talk, the saws were going, the noise, the shop vacs, everything was going. And she said, "Oh, you guys are really serious." So they got going right away. So they were just really impressed. But the other thing that at the end I was talking to Perry, and she said something that I heard before from our St. Matt crew. She goes, you know, there are some people who come on these trips just to pad their resume, and there's others that come here to do work. She goes, not only did you guys come here to do work, you came here to do the work well. I'll give you a perfect example. Connor, he's not here, is one of the things that in the bathroom, you know, Heather and Connor were working on his bathroom, and they actually did a poor job of the tile was there was a bathroom window, and the tile was slanted towards the window instead of towards the
Well, here, can I explain?
Sure, go ahead.
So there was a piece of this like flashing, and it was installed, and it was not installed right. Like the piece was totally being misused in this window surround. And Connor is awesomely diplomatic, awesomely knowledgeable, and advocated for doing what was right. Like the other folks that shared said that's what we were there to do, was to do what was right. And he approached the supervisors, and they said that's the way we were told to install it, and somebody else signed off on it. And we kind of let that sit for a little bit, and he diplomatically went back in and said, this is really, this is going to rot within 20 years. This wall will be rotted because the water will not roll off the right way.
Okay.
And then we escalated it to the next supervisor, who said, oh yeah, that's wrong, let's redo it. So similar to what Nancy said that she and Al in their bathtub had to do, was rip stuff off and chisel off mortar. That's how we started our week as well. And we also had to chisel mortar off of the tiles because you want to reuse those as much as possible. So, sorry.
No, that was exactly one of the examples of, you know,
There's Connor in the back.
There he is. Just making sure the job was done right. I do want to show you one story. At the end of the day, last 30 minutes, we're supposed to clean up, you know, put our tools together, stuff like that, get everything locked up and all that. And one of the things that I was doing is brooming the sawdust off the porch. Marcia's smiling. What I failed to check is that Marcia was down below still doing the brushes, and so here we are, we're all sweaty and just really tired, and here I am with the sawdust, and there's Marcia underneath washing the brushes. Also here, hey, I'm sorry, Marcia. Fortunately, we were going right back to the showers, so we could clean up, but she was a good sport about that. So, anyways, with that, I want to leave while we're playing this. Anybody have any questions, and then anyone else can answer any questions? Yeah.
Big on my head for these pictures.
Al, where did you eat your meals?
We ate our meals. It was kind of a nice situation at Camp Hope. Is where the kids were. We stay the same place. They provided breakfast for us, and then while we were eating breakfast, we had to pack our own lunches because we were staying on site. And then at around 5:30, I think it was 5:30 or 6, they had a set time. Then they would have supper ready for us. So it was at Camp Hope. The only thing we did, they asked is, since we were the only group, that if we weren't going to make it, to let them know. And on Friday night, we had a group, we went out as a group for dinner, but they did provide the breakfast.
There's the jump.
They're
moving the floor.
Well, it was kind of funny with that, because it was like this floor, it's like, how do we move this floor? She says, well, it's real technical here. This is what we're going to do. When we say 1, 2, 3, we jump, and that's what we did. We jumped until we moved the floating floor over, and then it was set, and then we could put up the rest of it. But any other questions?
Here's the, we had pizza night, make your own pizza.
Oh.
So there's like probably 10 pictures here about everybody. We broke up into teams of what, 4?
Yeah.
Right.
And we got to make these giant pizzas from homemade dough. So because we hadn't worked together enough.
So you were ceiling tiles out there.
Yeah.
That's right. And there's also, I forgot to hand this out, I'll just, there were some flyers. There were some other houses. You can take a look at it and pass it around. This was the house that was 1 block from us. And if you notice that there's a lot of height there. In the properties, they had a yellow ribbon on the utility poles. And what that represented is, for everybody who built building the house, the first floor had to be at least that level, because that was where the flood level was. So like this house it wasn't quite as high, it was only 1 block away, but ours was even higher yet. So that would have to be the first floor. So you had to have the steps up above, so if it happened again, you wouldn't have the flooding of the homes. So any of the existing homes didn't, but new homes had to,
Just to interrupt, Scott turned a milestone birthday while we were there. One of our tributes.
Gluten-free birthday.
Yeah.
Birthday cake.
Sorry, Al.
no, it's all right.
But we celebrated with Scott then, so we were blessed to be part of that.
Another question. I think you said earlier St. Matthew's Youth Group stayed at this facility?
Yes.
Huh?
Mhm.
Was it usual? I'm surprised only 13 people were in this 300-bed facility. Did they close down or shut down in the winter, or?
No, well, typically it slows down because their big time is, with the high school students, the youth trip, whatever, and that's where they're at full capacity. They were at capacity a number of occasions during the summer. But yeah, we were the only group. But typically, and just from past mission trips too, usually in the fall the numbers are down because it's just the adults. But I was surprised that we were the only group there. Any other questions?
Did you listen to some Zydeco?
Yes, we did. Well, actually, the Friday night when we got together, then we were together. We had dinner together, and then we kind of went our own separate ways. So every, when you have 13 people, it's real difficult. The advantage, we had three vans that worked really well because that way, if somebody wanted to go somewhere, somebody wanted to go somewhere else, you could do that. So that worked really well that way.
We had a radio playing at the work site too, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they have like a Sirius XM or whatever, or they did play like New Orleans, a local New Orleans station that had jazz and Zydeco.
It kept us going.
Yeah.
Music is really cool. Is this still a high tourist season in New Orleans? Well, I learned how to say
It always is. It seems like, yeah.
This is the ceiling
That's
tile.
a ceiling tile that Heather made for us.
And so it'll be up, and in fact, Ginger, you mentioned this, you can see all of them up in the thing, but you mentioned the water line. So we happen to know that that's right where he's gonna put our tile, is right by that marker. And then this is starting back over, so.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, well, thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, we'll be around here for a while. Thanks.
Thanks, Al.